President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is...
Why'd you kill the cat?
Say my dog was taken.
Smile for me.
Used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking...
Did you eat that cat?
People on television saying their dog was...
Did you eat it?
By allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country.
Did you guys see all
this? Look at
this?
what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns
Did you see
don't
her
want to talk.
eating
Not
it?
going to be Aurora
She was
or
eating
Springfield.
it?
Yeah.
A lot of towns don't want to talk
You
about
call the
it
Humane
because they're
Society,
so
see if they'll
embarrassed by
come
it.
pick this cat up.
In
It's deceased.
Springfield,
What did you
they're
do?
eating the dogs, the people that came in.
Why'd you kill the cat?
They're eating the cats. They're eating...
Smile for me.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Go like
and
this.
this is what's happening
Did you eat
in our
that cat?
country, and it's a shame.
Did you eat it?
Our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
television.
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
What did you do? Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile with your teeth. Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with him.
Did you see her eating it? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with him.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
You call the Humane Society, see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's deceased. You got rubber gloves? Smile for me. Smile with your teeth. Go like this. Did you eat that cat? Did you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Get in there. It's ridiculous. It's alright, other kitty, you're safe. Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with me.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah. She said, but it's blood on her shoes. She said she stumped it out.
Yeah.
Stumped the head out.
33 gun.
Well, you don't kill a cat and go to the hospital, you go to jail.
Southwest with Sam 410221.
No, she
Sam
was saying that she
410221.
killed 2 other kids. That's what she was saying. Yes.
Copy out at 10th and Duber with Sam 410221. 2259 hours.
You guys never seen her before, right?
No.
202.
I've seen her over there, but
202.
I don't know like what exactly.
You call the Humane Society, see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's deceased.
Well, thank you for being here today for our press conference on what I describe as the most important issue that's getting the least amount of attention relative to its importance in our country. And like many other issues, we're going to be deciding on November 5 what kind of a country we're going to be, and it applies to this issue as well. President Trump had withdrawn the U.S. from the WHO, and of course the Biden administration, like every other disastrous decision they made, reversed those policies when the Biden-Harris administration got in charge. Well, later this week, the UN is going to hold a, quote, summit for the future. And they're going to produce, this is right from their website, an intergovernmentally negotiated, action-oriented pact for the future with a chapter on transforming global governance. Ascending beyond the powers being sought by its subordinate agency, the WHO, the UN is seeking even broader and more powerful authority, as you will hear a lot about. The Biden-Harris administration apparently intends to fully support the surrender and compliance of the U.S. to the UN in these endeavors. They are aligned with the international globalists that hate America, that hate the Constitution, that hate our founders, that hate our founding Judeo-Christian principles, and they want America to become like the rest of the world. They don't want us to be subordinate to or governed by our Constitution. No, they want America to be subordinate to and governed by the UN, the World Health Assembly, and the WHO. And in fact, they intend to join with others at the UN summit this week to vote to award additional powers to the UN Secretary General. They seek to facilitate the evolution of the UN from an international cooperative body to an international governing body. These powers would be triggered by any one of a number of so-called global emergencies, whether it was a so-called climate emergency, a health emergency, a cyber emergency, or a gun violence emergency, whatever that's supposed to be, a financial emergency, or whatever they deem appropriate. And the Biden-Harris administration is in full agreement with the UN and the WHO on efforts to place us under their authority and to require such things as their international health regulations, including the surveillance of U.S. citizens, the censoring of dissenting views, and much more. The American people didn't vote for this, and they don't support this, and it's up to the people's representatives, that's us gathered here today, to have a responsibility to expose this and to reject this. The U.S. should defund the WHO again. We should withdraw from the WHO. Any agreements with the WHO or the UN should require Senate approval or disapproval. And a bipartisan House majority voted to require Senate approval just last week with Tom Tiffany's bill on the House floor. So I'm proud to be joined here by my House colleagues and others who are appropriately concerned and educated, informed, and leading on this issue. Again, this is the most important issue that's getting the least amount of attention relative to its importance and its impact on our country and on the American people. And with that, I yield to the gentleman from South Carolina, Ralph Norman.
Thank you, Congressman Good. I want to thank Frank Gaffney, Tony Perkins, all my colleagues for taking a lead role in this. As Congressman Good said, this is probably, other than our financial crisis this country's in, the most important issue to call attention to. the Summit of the Future will happen on September 22nd, 23rd. And folks, what that will do is cede America's authority, America's sovereignty to basically China. China is defined as a developing country. It is the #2 economy behind America. It's not developing. It will cede our decision-making ability to China. That's what you need to know. Let me read out what the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, his policy brief 2, issued on March of 2023. I propose that the General Assembly provide the Secretary General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale. Guess who determines that? The World Health Organization. It reveals in their definition a possible global shock, including large-scale climate or environmental events, determined by who? The Secretary General. Future pandemics. We all endured what the problem we had with the latest virus. High-impact events, involving a biological agent, determined by who? The World Health Organization. Disruption of global flows of goods, determined by who? Not America, but the WHO under the Secretary General. Not only that, it requires a 5% payment by the United States every year of our total medical dollars spent, which are in the trillions. Bottom line, we cannot let this go. This is a top-line issue that America must be made aware of. It's got to go through the Senate where it requires 60 votes. And we're going to fight to make sure all Americans know what's happening and stop it dead in its tracks. The WHO needs to be defunded, we need to do away with it, and America get out of it. I now call on Frank Gaffney with the Sovereignty Coalition.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to all of those present. I wanted to most especially thank those who voted last week for H.R. 1425, which did exactly what Congressman Norman just talked about, requires the United States Senate to advise and, I hope, dissent on the kind of surrender of our sovereignty to global government that is envisioned both with respect to the World Health Organization and with respect now to the UN. That's, make no mistake about it, the agenda of the UN Summit of the Future. That is unmistakably what they hope to put in train with their so-called Pact of the Future. And the thing that is absolutely infuriating about all of this is not only, as these gentlemen have said, this is really important. And most people in the media, most people in government, certainly the vast majority of Americans have no idea this is even going on, let alone reading in the rest of us. So it seems to me that what is needed now is not only to have the Senate charged, as with the World Health Organization's International Health Regulation Treaty, also the Pact for the Future. There must be no application of whatever they come up with in terms of world government by the UN Secretary General without the Senate's advice and consent. And secondly, I call here today on former President Donald Trump to use his platforms to address and draw out his opponent, the Vice President of the United States, on whether or not she supports world government. And if she doesn't, for her to disavow what the Biden administration is doing right now to try to bring it about. Thank you very much. Next up is Andy Biggs.
Thank you, Frank, and thanks to Bob and Ralph for organizing this, and for all who are standing with us, and my colleagues, and those who are concerned about this. You know, this administration has attacked United States sovereignty since day one. They've done it by attacking our geographical integrity, and now they want to cede our sovereignty over to the United Nations, and in particular the World Health Organization. It's important to understand that how critical it is that we let the American people know how dangerous this administration is and their policies are. So, when we think about it, $850 million. That's our annual assessment today to the World Health Organization. But we consistently pay more than our assessment. Why is that? Because this administration wants to pay more. And we're the folks at the United Nations working hand in glove with the World Health Organization to have their way. We would be spending even more. And we'd be spending more to become enslaved to them because of the things that my previous speakers, my co-speakers have said. I introduced legislation, H.R. 2022, which gets us out of the World Health Organization and defunds our portion of it. Why is that? It's because the World Health Organization has become captured. It's been captured by our international adversary, China. We saw that as a result of the COVID-19 issue and how the World Health Organization protected Xi Jinping and the Chinese. We can't give up any more of our sovereignty, any more of our geographical integrity, any more of our economic integrity to foreign actors who have no concern about the United States of America other than to take our power and our money away. This administration is all in for it. That should be enough to tell everyone that this is a non-starter. I appreciate my colleagues for helping raise this today. I appreciate you and the media being here today, because this will be an ongoing effort. An ongoing effort as the out-of-control spending that Congress is engaged in, coupled with the border problems that we have. Let's at least not turn over our healthcare apparatus to folks from a United Nations or an international multilateral institution that has no concern for us. So I thank you for being here, and now I yield to the gentlelady from Wyoming, my friend Harriet Hageman.
Thank you. In my home state of Wyoming, we have common sense, something that seems to be sorely lacking in the Biden-Harris administration. Wyomingites that I have spoken with consistently ask why this administration would push to fund any organization that has clearly come under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. They wonder why Biden and Harris would try to enter into unconstitutional agreements with foreign entities that would force Americans to give up their sovereignty. It is worth noting that the bulk of the WHO's budget comes from voluntary contributions from multiple countries and organizations. Throughout the past decade, the United States has donated billions of taxpayer dollars, making us the WHO's largest financial contributor. Over this time, the CCP has exerted an expanded influence and corrupted the organization's data, research, and information sharing. Despite its abject failure, the organization is seeking greater control and greater funding while continuing to block legitimate investigations into the origins of COVID-19. On June 1st, the accord that amended the international health regulations was adopted by the World Health Assembly. While there are many concerning aspects of this accord, with its ceding of our sovereignty being at the top of the list, it obligates member states to address misinformation and disinformation. The result would be something that we have become all too familiar with under this administration: mandating, censoring, and sanctioning of speech and other actions that are at odds with the WHO Director General's deliberations. Of course, this is a clear violation of our constitutional rights, but Biden and Harris have never cared much for those. I have co-sponsored legislation introduced by Congressman Chip Roy, the No Taxpayer Funding for the World Health Organization Act, which would prohibit the U.S. from making any assessed or voluntary contributions to the WHO. International law does not trump the Constitution. Biden and Harris may be compromised by the CCP, but they cannot force Americans to follow laws and regulations not passed by our own federal government. Thank you, and with that, I cede to Ronnie Jackson.
The judge overseeing Donald Trump's New York City criminal trial agreed Friday to delay his sentencing until after Election Day. The former president was supposed to be sentenced on September 18th after being found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records back in May. Trump requested a delay, and the judge agreed, pushing sentencing back to November. That decision has raised questions about how the upcoming election may affect the myriad of legal trouble that Trump is facing, and how a Trump win could impact it all, especially after a post the former president shared Saturday night on Truth Social. In it, he threatened to jail adversaries who he believes falsified election results in 2020. Writing, when I win, those people that created, or rather that cheated, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe is joining us now to break it down. Okay, Rebecca, first off, I want to break this into before the election, after the election, but before the inauguration and after the inauguration. I know this is uncharted territory. But are judges, first off, obligated in any way, illegally or otherwise, to do what we saw the judge in New York do, which is postpone the sentencing until after the election, presumably so as not to have an impact on the outcome of the election? Do judges have to do things like that?
First of all, good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me on. No, judges have broad discretion here. I think Judge Merchan really thought long and hard and was in kind of a tough spot because no matter what he did, some segment of the population is going to think in some way this is affecting the election. But he chose, I think, with the idea of preserving the court's legitimacy to push this off beyond the election so it did not look as if the court case and the prosecution was really about politics, but rather about the law.
So then, once the election happens, theoretically, if Trump is elected, what would then happen to those criminal cases? I mean, this sentencing is supposed to happen after the election, but before the inauguration. So he wouldn't be president. I mean, what happens to these cases?
Right. So if Trump wins the presidency, that is essentially a nail in the coffin, the final nail in the coffin of the federal criminal cases against him. And that's because what he can do at that point is hire an attorney general who will fire the special counsel and dismiss those cases. Or, of course, there's always the option of him pardoning himself, which is an untested legal precept. But, Trump has never shied away from pushing the limits of his power. So he could certainly try to do that. Either way, it's the end of the federal cases. The state cases against him, of course, he has no power over those cases, but it will likely delay the impact of those cases because the two cases, the one in Georgia and the sentence pending in New York, my guess is that those judges will use their discretion not to proceed because it would be too difficult to prosecute or impose a sentence on a sitting president. So essentially, he's either going to end these cases against him if he wins the presidency or push off the impact until after his presidency is over.
Okay, so since we're talking in sort of the world of theory, things that we never contemplated happening, if we have an election which is contested, we know that the former president is contesting the last election. And so if we have an election and it's contested and there are court cases in various states about the outcome of the election, and we have a November 26th sentencing date for Donald Trump. I mean, what happens to that case then? I presume that they could maybe argue that they need sort of more time, but how complicated could things get?
I think, things get pretty complicated. But again, judges have broad discretion for precisely this reason, because there are these external complications that can kind of weigh on a case. And the judge is focused on the law and the facts, but cannot ignore what's happening in the outside world. And one other thing I just wanted to comment, because you put on that Truth Social post of the former presidents, and this really is one of those things that concerns those of us who care about democratic institutions, because historically the Department of Justice has been independent of the presidency to ensure that prosecutions are fair and impartial. And this statement, there are limits to what he can do. Again, he may push those limits, but there are courts that will intervene. He needs prosecutors to be on his side. But this is an extremely troubling message that he's sending out about how he expects and wants to use his power.
I think that's a really good point and just a great reminder. The person in the executive office is not supposed to have influence over the courts. There's a division for a reason, checks and balances. So thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
The American people know Kamala Harris is a liar, and so does the military.
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the are we right now?
What the are you talking about, Miss VP? Who told you this information? You need to fire that individual who gave you that false information so that you were able to say that on national television. How can you run our country if you don't know what's going on within our military and the rest of the world? No idea. Look it up, fact check it, see for yourself that we have soldiers over there right now risking their life so that you can live your life. Don't forget that.
Make sure y'all hit that subscribe button.